Nomolos is a NES homebrew game created by Gradual Games. It came out last year and I'll be covering the demo for it. Now this demo only has 2 levels, but I think it's a fair indicator of what the rest of the game is like. And honestly, I don't think it's too bad. So anyway, let's get into it. Nomolos demo for the NES. The graphics in these first 2 levels are pretty good. Your main character is Nomolos, a cat in knight's armor. And I do like the design of his character. It's cute, but not cloyingly so. His walking animation is a little stiff, but then again he is in armor, so you can kind of forgive it. As for the enemy designs, they're alright. They include jelly creatures, some kind of flying mouth, a panther-like thing I guess, and trees that shoot bats. There's also an owl and some other kind of thing on the ground, I don't know what the hell that is. Their design is a little bit cartoony, but it is in keeping with the game, so it doesn't really bother me. One thing I don't like about the graphics is the opening cutscenes. I hate to say this about a homebrew, but this looks like something dashed off in MS Paint in about 10 minutes. And considering how good the in-game graphics are, this is surprising. I wish the game designer had used plain scrolling text instead of these graphics, because they really don't look good at all. As for the controls, they're really simple. You move left and right using the directional pad. A allows you to jump and B allows you to use your weapon. And I have to thank the game designer for not making up jump. I don't know why fucking video game designers do shit like that. However, there is one big problem I have with the controls. You can't duck. Why in 2012 would you make a video game where a character can't duck? And this becomes a big problem with certain enemies like the bats because they swoop in low and hit you before you can stab them. Other enemies like the jellies aren't so bad because although they're low to the ground, you can still hit them. But if you look at this footage, you'll see that my sword isn't actually hitting them. So it makes timing your attacks a bit more difficult. Also, the jumping control is a bit odd. It's very stiff and it feels a little unnatural. It's not too bad though, it just takes a little bit of getting used to. And at least Nomolos ain't slipping and sliding around like in a fucking ocean game. The gameplay is in the mold of a very traditional side-scroller. You move left to right and defeat various enemies. Before you begin, you're given the option of 3 different difficulties: easy, normal, and unfair. In easy you get 5 hit points, in normal you get 3, and in unfair you get 1. You're also given a couple of lives and the chance to continue if you lose all of them. So the game is pretty generous in that regard. During gameplay you're given 3 different weapons. You start out with a short sword, but you can also collect a mace and throwing spears. And quite frankly, this fucking sword sucks. It has a lousy range, and you have to get really close to the enemy to hit them. I really wish the sword had been made longer so you can hit enemies more easily. When you get the mace or the spear, you can keep it until you get hit once. Then you lose it and you have to go back to the sword. So do yourself a big favor and don't get fucking hit. There doesn't seem to be any score in the game as far as I can see, but it's not really that much of a sticking point. One thing that did bother me, however, is the enemies. If you're not a big fan of games with constantly respawning enemies, then you're not going to like this one. Because the enemies respawn constantly. I mean, it's like Ninja Gaiden bad. And these fucking flying mouths are a real big problem. Their patterns are somewhat erratic, and they will chase you, and chase you, and chase you through the whole fucking stage. And you better take them out quickly, or else they're gonna kill you. Sometimes the hit detection also feels a bit off. It's almost like you have to hit the enemies a second before you actually do. And if you go back and forth between screens too often, so many enemies can appear at once that the game suffers from slowdown and sprite flicker. I think the game might have worked a little better if they just not had the enemies respawn. Fortunately, the enemies in these first 2 levels aren't too difficult. They can be defeated with 1 hit. However, I think the game pours on too many enemies in this first part, and the difficulty rises way too fast for my tastes. Also, a few of these jumps are a bit too tricky for the beginning of the game. That's not to say these first 2 levels are impossible, but I think it might have helped to have the difficulty rise more gradually. And maybe if it wasn't for these fucking flying mouths, the game would be a little bit easier. I wish I could bury these fuckers in Nomolos' litter box. One nice touch in the game is its music. The opening and first level music is taken from Scarlatti, the classical composer. And as you know, I'm a big fan of classical music, so that was right up my alley. Here, listen to the music in the first level. I like it a lot. I think more video games should have classical music in them. The game has a few more nice touches that I liked. For example, the gravestone saying Pyre instead of RIP. In addition, I like Nomolos' death animation with him flying out of his armor. When compared to a homebrew like Battle Kid, this game does come up a little bit short. But even so, after playing these first 2 levels, I think this game is well worth your time. So in conclusion, I really like the fact that new NES games are being created. And I have to give props to Gradual Games and anyone else out there who's making homebrews. It takes a lot of time to create these games, and you have to admire the amount of dedication and effort they put into it. And I wouldn't mind seeing more NES homebrew titles in the future. This is Film and Stuff signing off. Thanks for watching. I wish I could bury these fuckers in Nomolos' litter box.